Welcome back, Deep Threat Sports Network. It's David here. It's Colin. And today we got another guest. We got Bryant Vessell. He's going to be joining us as part of this crew. He's got lots of experience about college football, so we're excited to have him here. But before we get there, let's talk about you, Bryant. Tell us about you, why you love football. What are you doing here?
Hey guys, longtime college football fan here. Went to the University of Missouri. Big time college football fan. I feel like I know quite a bit about the sport, other than just Mizzou. So hopefully I can bring a bunch to the table and provide more insight for everybody.
Absolutely. We always need some expertise. Hey, maybe sometimes we'll have you butt heads with Colin, but that's the fun of it, right? Uh,
Exactly.
but as we move forward, hey, there's a lot of leaves falling, but you know what else is falling? A lot of touchdowns on the end zones. It has been a lot of high scoring games, a lot of crazy games, a lot of crazy turnout. So, without further ado, we're going to hit right off into our bets from the weekend. So, I'm going to go ahead and list them off. I'm going to let you know which ones we hit, which ones we didn't hit. So, right off the bat, we've got Oklahoma State minus 7.5. That was a win. We got that one. Auburn minus 13 did not hit. And then we have Texas State -1. We hit. Tennessee at -10. We hit. We knew we were going to hit that one. That one was obvious. And then Nebraska, big one, -7.5, also hit. So very exciting. We're not going to talk about my wife, rooting for Colorado, but hey, I'm just going to throw it out there. Next up, Mississippi State +5.5. Did not hit that one. Iowa State, the over, we did hit that one as well. Oregon, we've got Oregon team total over 40.5. Did not hit that one. Oregon's not as high scoring as we thought they were. We'll see how they do moving forward. Next, Oklahoma State, Arkansas over 63. We hit that one. App State, Clemson under, did not hit that one. That was a blowout, both ends. And then next we've got the money line pick. We had Mississippi State +170. Did not hit that one either. And then Colin, tell us about your wife's pick. How'd that do?
Man, that never looked good from the start. That game was an absolute ass kick, and Kentucky never had anything going. I did like the pick that she made here. I was a firm believer in that, honestly. You know, that South Carolina defensive line really had things going. Brock Vandergrift never had it going. We talked a little bit about Mark Stoops, Shane Beamer, hot seat questions here. I think that got a little bit lighter for Shane Beamer and a whole lot hotter for Mark Stoops after this game, Dave.
A lot of seats are getting hot throughout college football, and that's going to be the theme throughout the year, realistically, because everyone wants to make the playoffs, and you're always going to make that push for next player, next coach, whatever it may be.
Hey, I want to talk about this Iowa State over. I had a lot of people tell me I was crazy for going against the grain, taking the over on this. Just want to talk about how it hit by a half point. Last fourth quarter field goal for the win by Iowa State here. Never a doubt. I don't know what you guys thought on that game, but man, I was so happy to see that. I wanted that game more than any game on this docket because I got more shit for that pick than any other one out there, and I'm so happy that one hit.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough to play in Iowa City. Definitely usually more defensive games, but this one actually slipped through in the very end. So that's a good call.
I just want to talk about the foot power. I mean, the game-winning field goal, I want to say it was 54 yards, Will, but hey, he made it happen for 54 to get the dub. I'm sure people were very happy back in Iowa, so exciting stuff. But next up, we're going to head to the film session. We've done this before, but now it's called the film session. And moving forward, it will be the film session. So here, we're going to talk about how the games went, what we saw, if there was any positives, any negatives, some team that may have surprised us, a team that maybe didn't surprise us. And we won't hit every game because we got a time constraint, but we're going to hit the ones that have the most talk about. It may not be, your favorite team. It may not be the number one team in the country. Usually it's going to be, but it's going to be very exciting. We're going to give you all the details, why we feel that things went the way they did. And more importantly, Brian and Colin are going to hook you up with all the stats, all the info, and maybe even a couple of gems here and there. We're also going to get good information. So first game we got is Texas at Michigan. That one was wild. Quinn Ewers, Heisman winner already? I don't know. I'm thinking so. Boys, what do y'all think about this game? How wild was that game? Did it turn out the way you guys expected it to go, or did it go better?
In that first quarter when Texas missed the field goal, I thought it was going to be a standard game where, Big Ten, SEC type game where it's big defensive, but, Quinn Ewers looked legit. Their tight end, Gunnar Helm, was unbelievable. They got a bunch of good receivers with Isaiah Bond, freshman Ryan Wingo. I mean, it's looking like a high-powered offense. So, after seeing how it finished out, it was surprising at first, but after how the way Texas played, it's going to be hard to stop them the rest of the season, I think.
I really think that Texas kicked the shit out of them from the start. The first drive down the field, if I recall correctly, Quinn Ewers rolls out, buys some time, extends the play, throws back across the field, finds a guy in the end zone for an incredible play, gets called back, does get held to a field goal, and then to your point, Bryant, the game did kind of unfold after that miss where you're sitting there thinking, wow, maybe this does really slow down a little bit. But the next time, I mean, Texas they dominated from start to finish. This Michigan offense, I still feel is built to run the football, and yet they keep putting Davis Warren out there. I don't think Davis Warren's the answer. Maybe Jack Tuttle, when he does come back from being hurt, maybe he does take this team over. I still think Alex Orji's the better guy for this job right now, especially with how run heavy this offense looks. They have absolutely zero receivers. Their team offensively does not scare me in any way, shape, or form. Donovan Edwards does not look the part of all the hype he was getting. This team's front seven on defense is all they have. Will Johnson in the secondary is all they have. The rest of that secondary does look pretty weak. I mean, Texas flamed them from start to finish. Yes, Dave, I do agree with you. Quinn Ewers catapults himself into the Heisman front running here after a performance like this against this high-powered defense. He really, really impressed me with the way he was able to extend plays, keep his eyes down the field, find somebody down there, and always make the right decision and the right throw. This run game is still not the best. They are relying heavy on this passing offense and this passing attack from this Texas Longhorns team.
All right. Speaking of quarterbacks, we've talked about this before. I mean, at what point in the season do you decide on a quarterback? You got to go one way or the other. I feel like you can't keep going down the road. I mean, I guess there is some element of surprise to the team, whether you're preparing for Orgy, whether whoever you're preparing for, you're kind of like wondering, who are they going to play? Who are they going to play? But I feel like as a team, you have got to put a QB at that position that is going to stay there for the rest of the year. I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but that's just my take on it. I just think you got to pick somebody. One way or another, you just got to ride it out.
Well, it's so dumb to me because right now the way they're orchestrating this offense, if Davis Warren's out there, the defense knows they're most likely throwing it. Obviously, he's going to hand the ball off too. But my point here being, as soon as Alex Orji comes in the game, the defense knows they're going to run the football. They haven't really thrown any passes with him. All they do is try to create some confusion, got a lot of motions, got a lot of reads. Alex Orji, when he comes in, like I said, it's just a blatantly obvious run play here, and any defense can pony up against that for the rest of the season. So, yeah, they're going to have to make a decision and stick with it and just let it ride.
Tight end Gunnar Helm looked really great. He had 98 yards and touchdown. Quinn Ewers had 3 touchdowns, really extended plays. I mean, they're going to be a tough team to beat moving forward in the season.
I just got to ask, is Michigan's only problem the offense? Like, how do you guys see the defense? Mainly because it sounds like it was just a lack of Michigan being able to put some points on the board in this game. So if Michigan's got a good quarterback, do you guys think it's a competitive game? Do you still think Texas rolls over them? What would that look like if Michigan is able to figure out their quarterback position?
Yeah, Dave, I really do think Texas was just a better team all the way around. I don't worry as much about Michigan's defense. They faced a really good Texas offense like we've talked about a couple times now. So, yeah, really their biggest concern for me is that offense. It doesn't intimidate any team coming in. They're not going to oppose any will on anybody. They're not going to keep the defense off the field. I feel like that Michigan defense is living out there on the field, trying to make plays for them, trying to do the best they can to keep it low scoring. Michigan's offense not doing great things, given the other teams that they're playing, advanced ball position, not a good start for this program. 1-1's not a terrible, terrible start. But listen, when you come off a championship and you still have championship aspirations, a 1-1 start, losing at home to Texas this way, not a good look.
Yeah, I think if they can just limit the turnovers and, rely on their defense a little bit more, I think they'll have more success. But, this wasn't a great start, but it's not the end of the season.
Well, one thing real quick, Dad, before we move on, one thing I do want to talk about is, yes, that the Davis Warren threw an interception. That was a horrible decision. And then Colston Loveland's fumble at the end of the second quarter was just 2 devastating turnovers. And at that point in the game, they could not recover from that.
Speaking of recovering from things, let's talk about the next game we got up. Arkansas, Oklahoma State. Arkansas let it get away. Talk to us, at what point did the dynamic change? At what point did things start going Oklahoma State's way? And is Oklahoma State the better team, or has Arkansas got something behind them as well this year?
I think Arkansas is a lot better team this year. Now, I think the dynamic changed in that game when they threw that pick six there at the end of the second quarter. From there, it seemed like momentum definitely flipped. And then Oklahoma State started, getting going on offense a lot better than they were in the first, 20 minutes of the game.
Yeah, Brian, to your point, really getting the fans back in this game helped Oklahoma State rally, really get things going, really gain that momentum. I did feel like Arkansas was in full control up to that point. Let's talk about how Oklahoma State kind of takes the game back. They're kind of in control. At the end of regulation, they have a game-winning kick on the line. They miss it. They kind of piss it away back. You're kind of asking yourself, wow, which way is this game going to go? It's like you're riding a roller coaster. The momentum just keeps swinging. I do want to say that Arkansas offense is pretty salty up to this point. Jaquindon Jackson is a real big threat at that running back position. I was kind of worried what it was going to look like with Rocket Sanders not being the bell cow there no more. But Jaquindon Jackson is the real deal. He's a hard runner. He's going to fight for those extra yards. Really going to help take a little bit of pressure off of Talon Green. He threw for 416 yards. One thing that really shocked me, and I don't know if you guys caught on to this as well, Ollie Gordon did not look the part this game. I was pretty disappointed with how he looked. I felt like he really could have helped this Oklahoma State offense a little bit more. He had 17 rushes for 49 yards and a touchdown. Definitely not an Ollie Gordon type game, especially in a hard-fought one like this. I feel like he should have been featured a little bit more.
By saying he should have been featured a little bit more, are you saying you don't think they gave him enough reps, enough carries? Like, where are you kind of going with that, Colin? Or was it just that he simply didn't execute on the reps he did have?
Well, 17 for 49 is not very good. That's not a very good average running the football. But I also think he should have been featured more than 17 carries. Gundy jokes preseason about how Ollie Gordon's off the field issues were going to get him 30 to 40 touches a game. That's how he was going to punish him. So let's really do that then. A lot of us really wanted to pony up on that. A lot of us really bought into Oklahoma State because of that. It might have been a funny little piece that Mike Gundy was adding, not disregarding the situation as a laughing matter at all. But Gundy did kind of make a joke about it. So I was all in on the Ollie Gordon carries. But, hey, I do want to give credit where credit is due. Brennan Presley is a great security blanket for Bowman. He had 9 catches for 91 yards and a touchdown. Really did help this Oklahoma State offense get things going as well. And that offensive line, keeping Bowman upright all day, that's huge for this team, man. If they can keep him on his feet, give him some time to survey the field, this is huge for this offense.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they're as salty this year on the outside. Now, Ollie Gordon, with all the Heisman hype, I'd be feeding that guy 40 times a game. But, teams scheme around that. So I think that's what Arkansas did. Arkansas had over 600 yards of offense and somehow still managed to lose. But, sometimes things go that way.
Hey, that's why we love college football. That's why we love college football. That stat sheet doesn't always give you the result you're thinking it's supposed to give you.
Speaking of giving everything you've got and still not coming away with the win, let's talk about Iowa State, Iowa. Iowa State getting the dub, taking the crown of Iowa. How did that game go? Did you guys just feel like the offense was bad? Did you guys feel the defense was just great? This was a pretty low-scoring game. We did hit the over on this, but still kind of low-scoring, or at least comparing to the other scores we had this week.
I thought Caden McNamara did not look good. Yeah, Iowa's not a passing team, but, those 2 interceptions he had, kind of set them back to begin with. Even though Caleb Johnson still had 187 yards and 2 touchdowns, you can't be turning the ball over.
Well, in a hard-fought game like this, the turnovers are critical. They'll absolutely melt your team down. And Caden McNamara, to your point, Brian, I was not sold on him at all. I maybe bought into the hype a little bit after the last game, and I can't really even call it hype, but when you have an Iowa offense that scores more than 20 points, you're going to throw a little bit of hype around it. So we got a little excited last week, thinking they were really going to get this offense humming. Let's not discredit what this Iowa State team did. They overcame some adversity in this game. They were on the road in a tough environment. In a rivalry game here, they're not known for coming out on the right side of the Cy-Hawk rivalry very often, but they did this game. And, yeah, it still was a low-scoring game day, but, hey, all we cared about is we had over 35.5, and they scored 36. That's all I cared about. I also did like seeing Iowa State come out in this one. We had talked about on this channel a little bit how we were a little bit higher on Iowa State than Iowa, even though Iowa looks to get the nod before the game started. But yeah, Rocco Becht has a really good receiver in Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. Those guys are both very stout. Those guys both really help take some pressure off of him. You can look up, and most of the time, those guys are getting open. I mean, Jalen Noel had 133 yards of the touchdown. Jaden Higgins had 68 yards in a touchdown. Those guys really taking care of business on the outside for Rocco Becht in this Iowa State offense.
Iowa regressed to, the Iowa we've known for the last couple seasons where they're playing a defensive game and just trying to run the ball as much as possible. We'll see if they can, kind of get back to what they looked like in week one moving forward.
Yeah. Caleb Johnson, man, that guy is an absolute horse. You talked about him a second ago, Brian. We got to circle back because that guy did everything he could to help get this team the W. He put the team on his shoulders here, and wow, what a performance by him. I don't want anything to go unrecognized with what he did in this game because they lost the game. Man, that guy's the real deal.
It's no shock. We're kind of in a recession. Money's tight. You're spending more, you're not making more. But I just want you guys to explain to me why Notre Dame goes out and pays Northern Illinois $1.4 million to get their butts kicked at home. How does that happen? As an athletic department, you are pissed. There's no way you're not lighting up Marcus Freeman and saying, what just happened? Because you spent $1.4 million to lose? Talk to me.
I'm saying it right now. I'm saying it right now. We got to really have a discussion real quick about what we're going to do with Marcus Freeman. I want your guys' honest opinion. I know where I stand. I want to talk to you guys first. What do we do about this Marcus Freeman situation? You now have lost to a team like Northern Illinois at home. That should never, ever, ever, ever happen. I don't care if you play them 100 times. You should win all 100 games. I don't care where you play them. You should win all 100 games. You've lost to Marshall. You've lost to Stanford. These are all losses on Marcus Freeman's resume as Notre Dame head coach. Unacceptable, Bryant. Please tell me what you think. I really hope you're on the same side of this as me. I am pissed off. I'm a light Notre Dame fan at heart. Like I've mentioned before, I've had a buddy of mine who played there, so it got me connected with the program. Had a really cool trip there. Got to see some things, on the inside a little bit, and man, it was awesome. So they did kind of drag me in to be somewhat of a fan. So I'm really pissed off about this loss, Brian. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I have multiple friends that are massive Notre Dame fans, and truly, I think you're probably overreacting just a little bit to this with Marcus Freeman and the few losses he has. But he's such a great recruiter, and I think his players will play for him. But you're right; you could absolutely not lose these games. I mean, you're paying them $1 million, million plus dollars to come and basically have your team come in there and show what they really are. But no, they come in there and beat you down. It's unacceptable. But I don't think he's on the hot seat yet, personally.
I guess too why I get so pissed about this is because we sit here and say, 3 years ago he was talking about how they need to go out in the portal, they need to add a quarterback. Well, they did that last year. They went out and got Sam Hartman, who had a very successful career at Wake Forest. He comes in, they can't scheme it up right. They can't really get things going. They bring in offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock this year. They bring in quarterback Riley Leonard from Duke this year. What more does he need? I don't understand how it used to be a quarterback issue, and now we make an offensive coordinator change. Now we bring in a quarterback, and we still can't go out and beat a Northern Illinois defense. Northern Illinois. We're talking Northern Illinois. This is so unacceptable for me. I just don't understand how this could ever happen. The only part of Notre Dame's offense that looked anything competent was Jeremiah Love. That dude did look very, very good running the football. I guess I should circle back and give credit where credit is due. Tip the cap to Northern Illinois. They came into this game prepared. They looked more hungry. They looked like they wanted this more than Notre Dame did. The biggest win in Northern Illinois program history. If you guys didn't listen to Northern Illinois' broadcast when they kicked the game-winning field goal, I highly recommend it. It was super awesome to listen to. I am super ecstatic for that Northern Illinois program. For me, I feel like you had a Notre Dame team come in off a Texas A&M win. I feel like they came in a little bit arrogant, had their noses held a little bit high, thought they were going to be able to sleepwalk through this and get a dub. And, they just got punched in the mouth at the very end. I'm sure all of them woke up the next morning and were still in shock.
Yeah, I completely agree. It starts to make you wonder if it's a scheme thing because, Riley Leonard was supposed to be the guy, and it just doesn't, off of last week, it doesn't seem like it. So I don't know what they're going to do moving forward. But I agree. They came in, looked like they were trying to just walk over and look forward to next week, and it did not happen.
Well, something that we've talked about on this show earlier on too is we've talked about how Riley Leonard only had 3 passing touchdowns last year. That comes as an absolute shock to most people. He was not known for being an absolute gunslinger. He was more known for his legs and could get it done with the arm a little bit. And I really think you're going to start seeing things kind of come to fruition here. Maybe shine a little bit bigger of a light that Riley Leonard really can't throw you to a victory. You're going to have to lean heavy on that run game. We've talked a lot about how that Notre Dame offensive line's pretty banged up. They're really going to have to stand tall, protect him, and really give him the most time he can get to throw the football for this team.
Man, you guys sound fired up about Notre Dame. I might nick something there.
Well, Dave, do you think that Notre Dame can beat USC now? I mean, 2-3 weeks ago, we were very confident Notre Dame takes care of business against a USC team. Now we're sitting here asking ourselves, USC looks great. Things are clicking for them. Miller Moss, hell, he looks like he might be the next thing for Lincoln Riley. So now I'm sitting here questioning, what does Notre Dame's record really end up at? I mean, we had them sitting around the 11-1, 12-0 mark, and I'm really questioning everything now for them. I'm not trying to overreact. I really try to limit that, especially when we get on here talking to you guys. But, man, this thing just looks flat-ass ugly.
Well, my thing is you are coaching at the University of Notre Dame. There's a higher standard. And I think, kind of Bryant hindered all that because I know, Colin, you're like, hey, Mark Freeman's got to go. But then Bryant's like, I think we should give him a little time. But I see both points because, Colin, to your point, if he's not producing, he's got to go. Like, you're spending too much money for him not to work. And he's had time at this point, I feel like, to make it work. But then I also
my thing is it's year 3. It's year 3. It's you can't have this in year 3. If this was year 1, year 2, that's okay, I guess. Not okay, but it's more acceptable. We're in year 3. It's time you got to cut the bullshit out, and you really got to get this thing humming.
So, Brian, now on to you. I got a question. What does Marcus Freeman have to finish off at, like, record-wise, for him to be able to stay? Or is he gone regardless?
I don't think anything other than another meltdown the rest of the season that he leaves. I think he stays no matter what. They're going to have to win out probably. It's funny. They still might make the playoff even if they win out just because it's Notre Dame and they're going to maybe sneak in somehow. Now, this is an eyesore on the schedule, but I don't think Marcus Freeman gets fired after this season. Like I said, unless there's they go like 2-10 or something, but they're going to have to at least get to 9 or 10 wins, I think, for him to feel somewhat okay about this season after this loss.
So real quick, while we're kind of talking about this and having an eyesore on the schedule and what expectations should be from this point and reevaluating a team, does something like this make you guys a fan or a non-fan of a 12-team playoff? Because do you feel like a team, to your point, Brian, a team like Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois, let's say they do win this thing out and they wrap it up at 11-1 with the loss to Northern Illinois, do you think a team like that should still be able to make the playoffs? Do you still think they should be eligible? Or do you think a loss like Northern Illinois proves that, hey, you're really not the best team in the country?
Just the fact that Notre Dame isn't in a conference, I definitely don't think they should make it even if they go 11-1. It seems like the CFP committee always gives them better look than everybody else. So I don't know. Personally, no. But with the 12 team, I think it's a good thing, but this is the other side of the coin on the whole 12-team playoff deal is you can have a team like this still get in with such a bad loss on their schedule.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I go back and forth on it. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I really want to see how it plays out. But, yeah, I also agree with you. Notre Dame, you really should join a conference. That'll help you out a ton in this kind of situation. But, Brian, let's be honest. I think they always try to give Notre Dame the nod here because of such a big fan base it has, the politics and the money and the revenue behind the sport. They want Notre Dame in this thing as much as Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman himself wants Notre Dame in this thing.
See, so I got two kind of opinions here with this. So, one, I do like the 12-team playoff for the simple fact that there's probably going to be that one team that knocks off a big team, first round, kind of like it happens in NCAA basketball. There's always that one team that knocks somebody off, and it's cool. We like to follow that. People love that. And that is what I think is exciting about football. We talk about it all the time, how it's so unpredictable. How crazy would it be if Texas get knocked off by the number 12 seed? Let's say Texas get knocked off by Liberty. How insane will that be? But I see, to you guys' point, that Notre Dame –
that'll never happen. That's never going to happen. I'm just going to say that right now. Even miracles happen. That's not even a miracle. Let's roll the red carpet out. I mean, I don't know what to say about. I'm speechless. We're never letting Liberty win that, Dave, ever.
Hey, listen, I hear you, but let's look at all these situations that have happened in college basketball. We're like, Duke's never going to get knocked out. This team's never going to get knocked out. Kentucky's always going to be great. But it happens. So I'm just throwing it out there. It's probably not going to happen, but there's always that chance. And I think that's what's fun about the 12-team playoff. But, again, I feel like in 12 teams, there's got to be a lot of other Power 5 teams that should make it in over them if they still have that one loss or that even more. I think if you have 1 or 2 losses, you're done regardless. You should be done. Totally. And also, let's say, I don't know, for example, let's look at Colorado and Nebraska. Nebraska beat Colorado, and we'll get to that in a second. But I think that loss it's valued more than this loss to NIU. Like, I think you lost to NIU, you're done. You should be done right now. Like, you should not even be considered for the playoffs, and that's it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with you. And to your point, talking about Liberty beating Texas, right back here, what we're talking about right now, we also said Northern Illinois would never, ever beat Notre Dame, and look where we're at. So, yeah, I mean, it does open it up. It does make it fun. To your point, if there is an upset, you can attach your wagon to that team and make it fun and make the most out of it. I'm with you. I do think I'm a firm believer in the 12-team playoff. I do think it is how you find your best team. And I do also love it because it gives us more to talk about, and it makes all these games entertaining at the end. Keeps teams like Missouri in the conversation, and we're all Mizzou fans here. So this is something for us that, we really should be fans of.
I already hinted at it already. Nebraska taking out Colorado. Sorry to my wife. It did not pan out. I didn't think it was going to pan out. But I think the big thing here is what's going on with Colorado. They've got the talent, we're aware that the offensive line is a problem. But at the end of the day, I think Dylan Raiola is a stud. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. He should be, like, at least on the thought process of the Heisman. Like, he should at least be at the bottom of the table, I'm not saying he should be a top 3 or top 5, but I think he should be – people should talk about his name when they talk Heisman. I mean, he's playing very well. Again, what do you guys think, Colorado, Nebraska? Does this come down to Deion Sanders? Does it come down to the players? I mean, because, again, this is his second season, but has he had time to make those adjustments that he needs to make? And what does that look like?
First off, I just want to say, how about Dylan Raiola on that Patrick Mahomes, pregame? He looks just like him. Got the same hairdo, the same number, same
dude.
build,
is that not the most ridiculous shit you've ever seen? Jesus,
it's like
Moses.
What is this guy doing? Like, he's literally a carbon copy of Patrick Mahomes. But anyway,
he's making me not a fan of him by doing this shit. Be yourself, dude. I hate that shit.
100%. I mean, he's literally doing the same pregame thing that Patrick Mahomes does, and it's kind of funny. But the Duke can play some football. Nebraska's got a pretty good team, a lot better than they were in the past, decade probably. I think they're going to be a good team down the stretch. But back to Colorado, like we said, just those 5 guys up front, they are just not good. It just makes me almost feel bad for Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. And what was the transfer they got from Vanderbilt? What's his name again? Will Shepherd. It makes me feel bad for them guys. I mean, they got 3 studs on the offense, and there's literally no time for Shedeur to throw the football. So I don't know what they do going from here. Player development thing with Coach Prime, just because, he seems to get rid of all of his players every offseason. I think that has something to do with it. But at the end of the day, you got to go with the guys you have, and they're just not jiving.
Yeah, the Coach Prime not having any consistency or, solid continuity on this team. We've talked about it here. We knew this was going to become a problem. You can't sustain a team like that. You can't sustain offense, can't sustain defense. You don't allow your team to mesh, learn how each other plays. I mean, it's just never going to work like this. And, this is why we tried selling you guys on taking Colorado under 5.5 wins before this season started. We are very confident in Nebraska getting this one done. We took Nebraska minus 7.5. I never had a doubt in this one. Dylan Raiola, we sit here and talk about how it pisses us off. He looks like Mahomes, and it does. That shit drives me absolutely crazy. Just be yourself, kid. You are an absolute stud. Trust in your God-given abilities that you have, not that Patrick Mahomes has. Don't try to play like him. Just do you. Dylan Raiola can spin this thing around. He can make all the throws. He has all the arm talent in the world. But I do want to talk about Tommy Hill and this Nebraska defense. Tommy Hill logging a pick 6 against Shedeur Sanders. That had to feel good. This Nebraska team looks like they had tons of juice in them. They looked like they were ready to shut Colorado up. They were tired of hearing Deion Sanders. They were tired of hearing Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter's name. I do want to say Travis Hunter, I still believe he is the best player in the country, bar none. That what he's doing is absolutely incredible. But one thing I also want to talk about is the team chemistry on this team. We're kind of alluding to it here a little bit. I really question that Shedeur Sanders coming off the field and just walking his ass to the locker room with time left on the clock. Maybe he was banged up, not sure, but I don't like the views of that. I really think, Deion should put his foot down. And what if this thing spirals out of control? What does this team do if it spirals out of control? Who grabs them by the reins? Does Deion, does you grab him by the face mask and say, hey, we're going to settle in here, just do damage control? Does Shedeur Sanders sit out? Does he play the rest of the season? It looks like he's going to be a first-round pick. What does that look like? I have tons of questions, way more questions than answers about this Colorado team than I do most teams in the country.
I agree. It makes you wonder if there's any leadership on this team from the football player standpoint, because truly I don't think there's a whole lot of leadership from Deion, especially when he says shit like the band can't play the fight song after a touchdown when Shedeur scores, so they can play his rap song over the stadium sound system. It's like, come on. But
yeah, his song ain't that good. I wouldn't want it playing over the sound system at all. That's a terrible song.
Listen, I think we've all played enough sports at this point to where we know you wouldn't try that leaving early from a game. It don't matter how hard you are. You sit there and you watch your team finish out. And that's a respect thing too, because, if your teammate, even if he does get injured, obviously if it's a big serious issue, they cart him off. But if he's able to come off, take a seat, and then take off, no, sit here. Like, if you're not going to sit here with me, like, and finish out the game, like, are you my teammate? Like, are you going to hold out for me? Like, what's the deal?
Especially when you're supposed to be the captain or the dog or whatever they call each other on this team and whatever symbol they throw on their jerseys. If you're supposed to be my dog, you should be out here no matter what's going on. You should be talking to me after the series, even if I am replacing you, because the score is lopsided or you're banged up or whatever I'm replacing you for. If you're the captain of this team and you're the coach's son of this team, you should really grab this team and catapult them in the right direction. And there is absolutely no leadership on this team. To your point, Brian, I'm a firm believer in that. I'm a firm believer they're more about themselves. It is all Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter at the forefront, and whatever they can get the most for those two. Nobody else matters. I really do think that you'll see a lot of guys not wanting to play for this team and this coach and this organization, moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. There was a reason there were so many transfers out last year. I think there's just way too much emphasis on individual goals rather than team goals, and I don't really see a way forward. They keep this up.
I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I don't think Colorado will make the playoffs, even in this 12-team playoff this year or next year or within the next 5 years. And hear me out. This is why I say this, because one, I don't think that he can make a winning program in the next 2 to 3 years, because there is so much turnover and he can't seem to figure out what he does and doesn't like. Now, I'll give him that. He can recruit. So he can bring good guys in. But as we all know, playing organized sports, you've got to have great team chemistry. You got to be cohesive. You just got to be a team. Like, that is literally why it's called a team. You can't just bring in 1 or 2 stars and then they show out, because this is what we're seeing here. We're seeing
truly. Yeah, that's truly how they're trying to operate. You nailed it. They're trying to bring 1 or 2 stars in. The recruiting out of high school is awful, so I don't think he can recruit well in that aspect. I don't think he tries very hard. It makes me wonder, does he look to be the Colorado head coach long term? I mean, you don't
freeze. I was getting there. That's what I was getting with this.
Perfect.
And why I said 0 to 5. 0 to 5 years. I don't see him making it. And then after that, I truthfully don't think he will stay longer than 2 or 3 years. I think he's going to go to another school. I'm thinking it will probably still be a decent school, but he's going to go somewhere where he knows that he can compete and he knows he can win, like he did at Jackson State. So I think he leaves, whether it's for another college team or he might even leave to be an assistant at an NFL team, because I think he's starting to realize himself that, like, hey, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. And that's why I think Colorado doesn't make the playoffs anytime soon, because it's not going to be with Sanders at the helm, because I think he'll leave within 2 to 3 years as soon as big money starts calling. Because, listen, I was all about, like HBCUs, go ahead, help them out, Deion. He was at Jackson State for a year. Listen, if you're just really trying to improve HBCUs, stay there. Stay there, improve a point, keep dominating at that level. But Second, Colorado came calling with some money. Oh, see you, Jackson State. We're going to toss away the whole HBCU thing. And now I'm just going to Colorado because I get more notoriety. There's more money. Like, I'm just not the biggest fan of Sanders, and he has done some good things. I mentioned that last episode. He's done some good things for his team, for his players, but I don't think he's much of a head coach. I don't know. I mean, he was a great player. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's much of a head coach.
He always is, looking for the next stepping stone. How can I go from this to the next step? And it's not really working out for him. And I think we're seeing that come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about how he wants to look ahead and maybe get another job. Guys, I don't think he can get another job. You don't win here at Colorado. You don't show any signs of improvement. You don't show any signs of life. You have more negative headlines coming out than you do positive headlines coming out. I just don't see this happening anywhere else. I think this is going to be kind of a trial run here at Colorado, and I think it may all come to a crash and burn at some point. Hey, I can't predict the future. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he does stay there long term and go to win a national championship. Maybe his problem is his son. Maybe once his son gets out of his way, and then he can really have a team without, any connections on it, and really just be the coach of a team. Maybe that will help him. But me internally, I just don't think he stays that long and rides that far for us to see that come to fruition at all.
Man, before we all have a stroke just from stressing out about the situation, we're going to go to a game that went a lot more one way. Next game we've got up is Tennessee just absolutely smacking my home state, North Carolina State. I mean, I didn't think they were going to win, but holy smokes, I didn't think it was going to finish like that. I watched the first quarter, and I thought we were kind of hanging in there, but it went downhill very quickly. Even though Nico I want to say he had 2 interceptions, it was still 51-10. So talk to me, guys. Is that what y'all expected? Did y'all expect it to be that lopsided? And what do you get from this? And what do you think about Nico?
I expected it to be kind of a high-scoring game. Tennessee runs that quick offense. We saw it here when Josh Heupel's at Mizzou. I mean, there's quick, get as many plays off as you can. But after those 2 picks, I thought it might have been a different game. Sampson, my goodness, that guy was running all over the place. And Nico, too, even though he wasn't A+ in the passing game, he was running all over the field. And they were just dog walking them. It wasn't even really close after the first quarter.
Yeah, Dylan Sampson is an absolute maniac running the football for this Tennessee offense. You pair that with Nico, who can get out and use his legs as well. You also pair that with Nico again, who can absolutely make every single throw across the field. He can really rip it around. They have plenty of receivers to get the ball to. We talked about that many of times. This Tennessee offensive line looks very good. They were really clicking. Nico was getting out, extending plays. Yeah, to your point, Dave, it did look like, your home team was going to stay in the fight a little bit here. That first quarter was kind of just a feeling out process, 2 great coaches going at it. So obviously most of the time they do come out and they kind of hard nose it a little bit just to see what it's going to look like. Set the game flow up a little bit. But yeah, Grayson McCall threw a pick 6 at the end of the first half that was completely detrimental and a game ender for NC State. And I knew at that point Tennessee was probably going to go ahead and take this game over. And that's exactly what they did. They never let their foot off the gas. They just stayed there, kept punching them in the mouth. Really just dominated this game from start to finish. I never had a doubt once I saw it play out. Tennessee is a very, very good team. I think you guys will be surprised to see where we have them in our rankings later. They have shown us everything they need to show us. They have a good win here against NC State. I just don't think there's many teams out there right now that are putting it all together better than Tennessee is as a football program.
Yeah, they looked like the most well-rounded team this early on in the season thus far. I definitely agree. And like you said, I think NC State kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit too. I think we might have been a little too high on them to begin with. McCall just doesn't look the part as of right now. This is still a long season. Tennessee's firing all cylinders. NC State has some games coming up they can win, so we'll see where it goes.
I think something I've really learned from McCall here that I'm actually surprised to say. I can't say I'm surprised because I knew he wasn't a world beater, but I'm a little surprised that there's a lot of throws that he just cannot make. I mean, Kevin Concepcion is an absolute game changer at receiver for this NC State offense. But I just think Grayson McCall sometimes struggles getting the ball out, getting the throws there on time, and really putting some velocity behind the football. And it's really starting to show at this point in his career. I don't think he's necessarily a bad quarterback by any stretch of the imagination, but I think he's more of a game manager. They really need a heavy run offense to help him, maintain the flow of the offense. I'm just not impressed by him at all.
Next game we're going to talk about is Penn State barely beating Bowling Green. Another one of those games that, on any given week, that could have gone the other way. And I think James Franklin, he should be on a hot seat. I think he, again, kind of how we're talking about Notre Dame, there's a higher standard at these programs. I mean, look at how many people go to Penn State games. I mean, there's a lot of money involved there. So you want results, and you want results fast. And I don't think Penn State has done that with James Franklin at the helm.
Yeah, I've been all over the place with James Franklin. I've been up high with him. I've been down low. I've really been back and forth. And I think for me going into this season, I told myself this was really going to be the make or break season for James Franklin in my eyes. I think he has a really good team. I think bringing in Andy Kotelnicki at the offensive coordinator position, pairing him with Drew Aller, they've got a couple receivers that can make some plays. They got a hell of a run duo out of the backfield that can really be a difference for this team. It takes a lot of pressure off Drew Aller. Man, I really hope James Franklin gets his team clicking. We're really high on them. This was not a good showing this week. Luckily, Nick Singleton had 119 yards and a touchdown. You pair that with Katron Allen looking damn good as well with 101 yards on himself. Drew Aller didn't impress me that much, but I think they did just enough to win this football game. And that's all you have to do sometimes, Dave. When you have a rough start in a football game and you're a good team like this and you have a lesser opponent playing up to your ability, I think Bowling Green, we cannot knock anything that Bowling Green did in this game. Credit to this Bowling Green team. Credit to Penn State and James Franklin for doing enough to secure the bag, get out of there with a W, and not drop one like you see some of these higher-end teams do sometimes.
Yeah, a win's a win. I mean, we just need to start winning with more authority if you're Penn State. Otherwise, you're turning into a Marcus Freeman type situation where we have all the pieces and not, getting across the finish line. So, win's a win. We'll see where it goes from here with them.
Yeah, they leaned extremely heavy on their tight end, Tyler Warren. He had 8 catches for 146 yards. The next closest receiver had 34 yards on this team. That could be a problem long term, especially when they start playing even better opponents. But hey, maybe they just weren't showing us everything in this game. Had to get back in the pocket a little bit to go ahead and get this dub out. To your point, Bryant, win's a win. Sometimes you just got to take them how you can get them. That's all that matters.
And one more thing I want to talk about with you on this. I feel like Nick Singleton needs to get more run. I realize doing like a 50-50 committee backfield can sometimes be better. I get Katron Allen is pretty good, but I feel like Nick Singleton's almost like that Saquon Barkley type player where he needs to get the majority of the carries, in my opinion. I don't know what you guys think. I think that'd be better for them, in the long run.
No, I totally agree with you. I think Nick Singleton is a difference maker at that running back position. I do think he has all the intangibles to be a difference maker at that position. It's kind of hard for me to knock Katron Allen a little bit because the guy's absolutely taken the most of the situations that he gets and just absolutely lighting the world on fire himself. So I keep trying to tell myself maybe James Franklin's just taking them both, keeping the legs fresh for a long season ahead, knowing they do have a tough schedule down the stretch. Maybe they're just trying to keep these guys fresh. I can lean into that and I can support that a lot. But yes, Brian, I do think in these heavier-ended matchups, they should really lean on Nick Singleton. I do think he is a difference maker at that position as well. Totally agree.
Speaking of close games, the next one we're going to highlight Kansas State, Tulane. 34-27, Kansas State takes a dub. What did you guys see there?
I'm going to be honest, I didn't pay much attention to this game. I didn't think Tulane was as good of a team after they lost some of those pieces in the past few years, but man, they played really well. There was a controversial pass interference there at the end of the game that, took away a game time touchdown. So they easily could have pulled it out. Now, K-State, Avery Johnson, I'm not really sold on him yet, but, this was a real test for them. With it being a road game at Tulane, I've heard that's a decently hard place to play. That can be a test for many teams. I didn't think it would be as big of a test as it was.
This game became a thriller, man. Tulane looked really damn good. They looked coached up well. I don't think K-State looked bad. I just think Tulane truly did look that good. So I'm going to kind of roll with that a little bit here. We're pretty high on K-State over here a little bit. I do think, in my opinion, they're the favorite to win the Big 12. I don't want to overreact. I'm still going to ride with that. I am sold on Avery Johnson. I'm a firm believer in him. I think he's a hell of a dual threat quarterback. And I think why I'm sold on him so much is that Kansas State was, in my eyes, they made it appear that they were okay with losing a Will Howard. And the way I read that situation was, okay, if you're okay with losing a Will Howard who's been consistent for you at that quarterback position, maybe Avery Johnson's that much better. Maybe Avery Johnson has the more explosive play power. And I do think that is the case for him. This Kansas State team can really run the football as well, help take a lot of pressure off him down the stretch. Yes, it was a hell of a controversial call. It can really go either way. I don't want to sound like I'm just trying to ride with my picks here, but I do think the right call was made. Now, if I was a Tulane fan, I would totally disagree with me on that. But hey, Kansas State, once again, just another team to get in, do just enough to get the win, and get out and not fall to a lesser opponent.
I did watch a little bit of the Tulane game, but game I did not watch was a Cal-Auburn game. I mean, I just kind of looked at the game and I was like, yeah, Auburn's going to catch the dub. It's going to be that, that's that. But Cal coming off with a 21-14 win. Did you guys see that coming? I mean, how big of a shock was it? Because for me, it was a big shock.
Yeah, I'm absolutely blown away at the ending of this game. I really was actually starting to become kind of sold on Auburn. I can't say sold that I thought they were going to make a playoff push by any stretch of the imagination, but I did think what Hugh Freeze had going, Cam Coleman being that freshman stud receiver for this team, I really did think they probably were going to have some good things going. I didn't think they were going to have any trouble with Cal coming in here. Fernando Mendoza looked very good for Cal. He was 233 with 2 touchdowns. They ran the ball very well. My biggest concern here with Auburn is still the same concern that I had before we got to this point. Peyton Thorne at that quarterback position has never done anything crazy in his career, has never done anything to cement himself as an SEC starting quarterback, in my opinion. So I'm still absolutely blown away. Hugh Freeze and this Auburn team did not dip into the portal to get somebody to push him a little bit, because at this point, you're stuck with this guy, and I do not believe he can get you to the next level.
No, I definitely agree. Having those 4 picks, with the offensive line play still not being the best as we're used to seeing with an Auburn team, you just can't absolutely do that. And, this is a testament to it. If you do that, you're going to lose to probably teams you should beat 9 out of 10 times. That was a horrible game from an Auburn standpoint.
Having a lot of this discussion about some of these teams not looking how they're supposed to look, not looking prepared, maybe not looking juiced up enough. Just a conversation piece here, maybe get your guys' thoughts on this, because it honestly truly just came into my mind right as we sat here. Do we think taking 12 teams to the playoffs has any implication on this? Do you think some of these teams that are, the upper echelon of talent and the, have all the hype around them, or their names constantly in conversation of pushing to make the playoffs, do you think these teams are just kind of sleepwalking a little bit, knowing that, hey, if we are to get one loss, it's not absolutely detrimental to our season. We can still bounce back and really then kind of pony up and then maybe take it serious. Maybe almost like some of these teams are taking it kind of like a preseason. Or am I overthinking this a little bit? Am I just kind of pissed off at some of these poor performances by these better teams right now? I mean, I truly want to get your guys' thoughts on this, because this is just an out of the blue thought I had here.
I actually have the opposite thought process to this. I'm thinking that, if anything, all the smaller teams are like, oh snap, we got a chance here. Like it's still not a big chance, but now they actually have a chance. For example, you look at NIU knocking off Notre Dame. Notre Dame still thinks they're a big program. I mean, they are, but I think they just didn't play as hard because it was a smaller team. But NIU is like, hey, we already won one. If we went out, maybe we got a chance. What if Liberty loses? Gets a couple losses. There's a lot that can happen. So I think a lot of these smaller teams are playing harder because they realize that they're going to win. For example, let's look at NIU. Let's look at Cal. Let's look at all these smaller teams that knocked off bigger teams. A lot of these teams wouldn't even be even in the thought process of college football playoffs. Versus now that we've got 12, there's a shot. I feel like it gives everybody a good shot. Like, if you're not a Power 5 team, like if you're a Group of 5 team, and let's say you just crush it, you blow people out, you might get that shot. And that may be the only time your program has ever had that shot of the playoffs. So I just think the smaller teams are playing harder. And I think that's why it's going to make the season more entertaining, because you have got to play hard all season long, because it's a longer season and you're not going to get in with more than 2 losses. So I think it's making everybody play that much harder this time around versus before, we get, to like the, 2 weeks out from the selection committee. Teams already know they're making it or not, realistically, unless you have like between that 4 to the 6. That's where there may be some change. But everybody else out from 6 and on, they know they're not making the playoffs. It's just about what bowl game am I going to play.
Exactly. And I think a lot of the teams that are in the top 12 right now, or even, preseason, they're putting a lot of undue pressure on themselves, I feel like, because they got to keep winning. Maybe not as much as they did in previous years, but now they got to keep the foot on the gas, and keep winning these games, unlike the Notre Dames and the close wins with Oregon and Penn State. And stuff. You feel like they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves more than they may have in the past few years.
No, hey, absolutely. I mean, I love your guys' take on that. And honestly, you guys kind of really sold me on that maybe these lesser opponents are playing up. And I even talked about that in the game before, how a lesser opponent was playing up, So absolutely, I mean, that could 100% be the case. And, to your point, a Northern Illinois team that has that Notre Dame win on their resume now, I looked at their schedule before, and their hardest game on the schedule left is NC State. I don't want to be unrealistic for this Northern Illinois team. I'd be full of shit if I sat here and told you I did tons of research on Northern Illinois before this season started. So I can't go into grave detail on what they really have. But, hey, they showed me enough to be like, hey, they could really push for this group of 5 playoff automatic bid. Is it something that maybe they're having conversations about now? They definitely will probably have the best win of a group of 5 team, right? I mean, that should catapult them into serious conversations of getting that 12th seed. Hell, you go undefeated and you have a win like Notre Dame on your resume, Notre Dame happens to win out or only has one more loss, you may find that group of 5 team get the 11th seed instead of the 12th seed. So, I mean, is that realistic thoughts to think that maybe Northern Illinois really can now have their name brought up in this conversation?
You look at the Associated Press poll this morning that came out or yesterday. I mean, Northern Illinois is number 25. So there's a lot of people in the country that think so.
If Northern Illinois goes undefeated, and unless Liberty goes undefeated, I mean, shoot, even if Liberty goes undefeated, I mean, Notre Dame win is Notre Dame win. I mean, they are a good program, especially if Notre Dame finishes out the season strong. Like I said, they don't lose again. That means a lot for Northern Illinois. So Northern Illinois should be betting on the fact that Notre Dame does well because that will help them regardless.
Well, and if Northern Illinois, like to your point, Dave, in the scenario that you just laid out for us, if Northern Illinois wins out, they now have a win against NC State and a win against Notre Dame. As a group of 5, there should be no better resume than that out there. There's absolutely no way there could be. So I think at that point, you're an automatic shoe-in. And to Brian's point, yes, getting ranked at that 25 spot, love that for that program. Man, they're at an all-time high. Just good conversation here, boys. I really wanted to see what you guys thought about those couple takes I had.
Next up, we've got South Carolina beating Kentucky. We didn't see that one going this way, but is South Carolina on the rise? Talk to us. What do you guys think? Is South Carolina improving? Did Kentucky just not have a good game? What does that look like?
Honestly, this game just made me laugh. Old SEC East foes from the previous SEC teams that Mizzou played a lot. Kentucky had 44 yards passing. Are you kidding me? That that is just laughable. Like, what are they doing? And then South Carolina team that barely beats Old Dominion from the week before. Shane Beamer probably on the hottest seat in the country. I saw this score. I didn't watch the game. I just followed up and looked at the highlights. It was an all around just blunder by Kentucky.
Kentucky brings in Brock Vandagriff to really take this passing attack to the next level for Mark Stoops. They did not do that. They did not do that at all. You talked about how they had 44 pass yards. That is the worst I can remember for a Kentucky team in a long time. They showed absolutely no signs of life. Nothing looked impressive. The scheme looked awful from the start. Man, we whiffed extremely hard on this one. I really thought Kentucky would take care of business. To your point, Brian, I really thought Shane Beamer was in some serious trouble at that head coaching position for South Carolina. We've talked about Dylan Stewart, the freshman defensive lineman for this South Carolina team after their last week's performance. The guy is an absolute game wrecker. Said the same thing last week. We're going to say it again this week. I want you guys to understand this guy is truly a difference maker for this South Carolina defensive front. The D-line blew Kentucky's offensive lineup the whole entire game. They made it an absolute long, miserable day for them. Stewart and Kennard have 6 sacks combined already this season. That's a half sack shy of last year's defensive ends. Think about that for a second. We're 2 games in, and they've already got 6 sacks combined, a half sack shy of what they had last year. They're really getting big things out of that front on that South Carolina team. I know we're only 2 games in, and I know they haven't played, upper echelon talent, but Kentucky's nothing to laugh at. Kentucky is a very good opponent. Brock Vandagriff and this offense looked all kinds of out of sorts. A lot of questions to answer going into this next week's game. They really should be prepared more than what they were this last week.
The next underdog, we've had a lot of these underdog stories these last couple weeks. Next one is we've got Illinois knocking off Kansas. I didn't see it coming. I kind of figured Kansas would beat Illinois comfortably, but hey, Illinois showed up. Talk to us about that.
Definitely think this game helped that it was in Illinois on home turf. They played really well, especially down the stretch with that final drive there, stopping Kansas when they're trying to come to win the game or tie it. That being said, Jalen Daniels did not play a very good game for Kansas. The 3 interceptions he had were the difference maker, I think. Moving forward, you can't be doing that. Like you said just now, Dave, Illinois played their hearts out. They were basically manhandling them up front. So we'll see if they continue that. It was a good game, very entertaining game. But I thought Kansas would take this one, but not this past Saturday.
What a fourth quarter by Illinois. They sat there and they just kept making attempt after attempt after attempt. Never slowed down, never gave up, never lost focus. Really stayed true to the task at hand. Zachary Franklin, an absolute difference maker at the receiver position for this Illinois team. Illinois is 5.5-point underdogs at home. Anytime you can get a home dog like that in a close spot match like this just goes to prove that. Yeah, man, credit to Illinois and what they did. Jalen Daniels, to your point, Bryant, did not look good, and I do want to sit here and kind of place blame just a little bit. You can't have your best player on your team, kind of lay an egg like that. It just wasn't good at all, and, I really am shocked Kansas did get upset in this one.
Game, it was something that we expected a W from Clemson, but holy smokes, did you guys watch that game? I mean, I wasn't watching it until I had the quad view going on. And then I was like, hold on. I thought I just saw I want to say it was 40-something. I was like, whoa, no way. No way. So talk to us. How did Clemson blow out App State like that? I mean, App State's not a terrible program. I'm not saying they're a playoff team, but they're not a bad program.
Klubnik was really settled in this game. I think they had a great game plan for him going into this game. They didn't ask him to do too much. They asked him to make the routine throws, finding underneath routes. You don't have to do anything crazy. Just make the read, find your guy. And we talked about a guy like Brian Wesco Jr. on this show before, freshman receiver for this Clemson team, really electric, really lit it up this game, really showed his speed, able to run away from opponents on a long touchdown reception that he had. He had 130 yards and a touchdown in this game. Cade Klubnik did look good. I don't want to discredit what he did. But, yeah, they didn't ask him to do too much. They just leaned on this App State team, out-talented them, and really showed what they can really do against some lesser opponents. I don't want to overhype them too much. I really have to see what they can do against better opponents, not discrediting App State at all. They are a good group of 5 program. But, yeah, Clemson took care of business as they should in this game.
After last week's game with Georgia, there was, actually some talk if Dabo Swinney is the answer there anymore. And I don't think that's true, but, he probably lit a fire under him this week in practice. I bet it was a ruthless week of practice and film study for them to get, focus for this game. And they came out and showed it with a big time statement over App State.
We've got is Oregon beating Boise State. And it kind of goes back to who makes that 12th spot. I know a lot of people were high on Boise State. Talk to me about that game. Was Oregon just superb, or was Boise State just not playing well? What did that look like?
I really do actually think Boise State's a pretty good team. I mean, their running back should 110% be in the Heisman conversation. Ashton Jeanty what does he have, 7 touchdowns now? No, 9 touchdowns? That's insane. He is so good, but Oregon, I think, played the game they usually do, game manager type situation. So they came out with the win in the end. But, Boise State, I think, is better than a lot of people think they are. I think they have a chance for the group of 5 spot in the playoffs. So it wasn't a horrible loss for them. They probably were expected to lose. I mean, Vegas had them to lose. So we'll see where they go from here.
I don't want to overreact too much. It is early. It is only week 2. But Oregon has done nothing thus far that has absolutely blown me away like I was truly expecting from this Oregon program. To your point, Bryant, I do think Boise State is a very good football team. This Oregon defense legitimately could not tackle Ashton Jeanty. He had 25 rushes with 192 yards, 3 touchdowns. Absolutely unreal when you're playing a team that is much better than you are. This guy has taken over the role as the number one running back in the country for me. He has surpassed Ollie Gordon. I really don't think it's up for debate anymore. He's locked in every game. Every touch he runs like it's going to be his last touch of his career. I do think this guy should find his way into the first round of the draft. I know teams don't step up and take running backs as much anymore, but this guy is truly a difference maker at the running back position. By far the best running back in the country, in my opinion. I'm right there with you. He's at the top of my Heisman ballot. You know, we're going to get into that in a little bit, so I don't want to give too many spoilers, but he's 100% in the conversation for me. I really just have a lot of questions about this Oregon team a little bit. You know, I know they scored 37 points. That should be enough to win you most football games. I do agree with that. Tez Johnson is an absolute unreal talent for this Oregon Ducks offense as well. He had a punt return touchdown that was the difference in this game. If you look at the score, 37-34 at the final. So, yeah, man, I really hope Dan Lanning can settle in, get this team settled in. We are extremely high on Oregon here at this network. You know, I don't know if you guys remember dating back, but we definitely had Oregon at the top of our playoff conversation. So, yeah, man, Dan Lanning, settle this team down. You kind of got by here a little bit. Now let's get things clicking, settle in, force Dylan Gabriel to make some throws. He has really kind of let me down a little bit at this point, too. I don't think he's going to lead you to the playoffs by himself. So you're going to have to scheme some things up that really match Dylan Gabriel's, offensive talents.
We've covered a lot of great games today. And, again, we can't hit every game. So I'm going to ask each one of you guys, give me one more thing you want to talk about before we get into who each person has their Heisman guys. Who are your top three? But before we get there, hit us one more thing that you want to talk about.
I just want to start out. My big thing to talk about that we didn't already is what was Billy Napier thinking in the offseason when he put Graham Mertz to be the starting quarterback of that football team? I mean, this freshman is unbelievable, and Graham Mertz is not. The Lagway, I mean, the dude looks like Anthony Richardson 2.0 out there. If he keeps going, I think he's going to get the starting position, bar none, in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think I read today, and I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty confident I read today that Billy Napier said that Graham Mertz and Lagway are kind of going to have a dual role going forward. Yeah, Brian, I'm with you. DJ Lagway is a much more talented individual at that quarterback position than Graham Mertz is. I don't want to discredit what Graham Mertz did last year. He helped this Florida team do what they did. They accomplished a little bit. But, yeah, I'm with you. If I'm Billy Napier and I'm trying to save my job at this point when I'm on the hottest seat in the country, I'm going to start DJ Lagway. I'm going to show that, hey, I've recruited this guy. I've got something going forward for this program. And if you don't keep me at the head coaching position, you may be more prone for Lagway to transfer out. So, absolutely, I'm going to showcase everything Lagway has. I'm going to absolutely sell my job and sell my program on DJ Lagway at this point. He was 18 for 25, 456 yards, throwing a beautiful deep ball strike to the end zone with 3 touchdowns, no picks. Incredible, stellar first freshman performance for DJ Lagway. I totally agree with you, Bryant. I'm glad you talked about him. We could not get out of here today without bringing his name up. But something else we have to talk about a little bit here that we can't get out of here without talking about is this Oklahoma Sooners team and this Oklahoma Sooners game in Jackson Arnold. Wow, they looked absolutely terrible against a terrible Houston opponent. This Houston team just lost to UNLV last week. Oklahoma, we talked about it earlier, just survive, advance, just get out with the win, just do what you have to do in a game like that and get the win. And they did that. They did do that and succeed in that situation, but not an impressive win at all. It was completely ugly. I don't know if you guys watched it. Jackson Arnold did not look good either, and, man, they're really high on him. I don't want to shit on the kid too much. I know it's really early on in his career, but, yeah, you got to do better than that. To our points before, I think this is a game that Oklahoma thought they were just going to out-talent, come in, sleepwalk, get by with the dub, and, hey, at the end of the day, I guess that's kind of what they did, and it did kind of work. Something else, Dave, I'm not just going to talk about one thing. If you only give me time for one thing, I'm going to talk about a couple things. You know me better than that. I'm going to talk a little bit about Jeremiah Smith here. Absolute stud freshman receiver for Ohio State. I think he's proven why he was the number one receiver out of high school. I think he's proven why he's one of the most talked about receivers in the country. That guy is electric. Just, hey, let's just laugh, man. Just another great receiver at Ohio State. It just constantly works out. I think he's already to be the best receiver on that team, kind of leaving Emeka Egbuka behind and Carnell Tate behind a little bit. I won't take up too much more time talking about him, but really keep him on your radar the rest of the season. If you're in a fantasy league, if nobody has him yet, go pick that guy up. He's going to do good things for you. He's proven to be their number one guy at this point. And Freshman receiver Ryan Williams for Alabama should still be a senior in high school. We're going to talk about him a little bit, how he got back in the end zone for Bama this week. Jam Miller, Justice Haynes, hell of a running back tandem at Alabama as well. Just some guys I wanted to talk about before we got out of here. I do want to talk a little bit about Jackson Dart as well. That guy has more touchdowns than incompletions this far in the season. We had to throw that out there before I got off the mic. 7 incompletions, 8 touchdowns. That had to be discussed.
So next thing we're going to talk about is who is our Heisman top 3. I know we said top 3, but once I started looking at it, I had 4 in mind that I thought are Heisman guys. First and foremost, a guy that a lot of people have already talked about. I got Travis Hunter at number 1 because he's great on offense. He's great on defense. How often do you get that? I mean, the Heisman should be the most outstanding player.
Good God. Travis Hunter, number 1 for you right now. Okay. All right.
And hear me out. Here's the thing. All right. You have a quarterback that plays amazing. Let's look, Cam Ward. Cam Ward's going to play great. But you guys, we all 3 know that playing offense and defense and being great at both is very hard. How often have we played with somebody that can both play offense and defense at the same level? I mean, and at the top tier. I mean, he is good on offense. He's not just good. He's great at offense. He's great at defense. So I think that's more valuable to a team than, let's say, you have Dylan Gabriel. Yes, he is going to be a great offensive power, but why not have a guy that he could throw in on offense and defense? I mean, at the NFL level, we probably won't use him to that extent. Right off the bat, like I said, I got Travis Hunter, and as of now, I don't think it's a question that he's the number 1 guy.
Well, let's talk before we advance a little bit on this. We got to talk about it a little bit because, you are correct, Dave. I do want to talk about how I said earlier in the show, I do think he is the most talented player in the country. So I do agree with you on that for sure. I guess my biggest question here is, let's say Colorado, ends up 5-7. Do you still think he can truly get his name in conversations at a 5-7 Colorado record? I mean, that I think it's my biggest concern for him. I think if he was on a better team, I really think you are 100% correct. This wouldn't be a conversation. I think we would just know that, hey, Travis Hunter's going to go ahead and win this thing start to finish. So I guess my question for you is, if they wrap it up at 5-7, do you still think he could be the number 1 on the board?
I think for me, if you are the committee deciding on the Heisman, and if he's playing great, I mean, even if they finish 5-7, if he's playing great on both offense and the defense, and he's putting up the numbers, I think he still can be the Heisman. But again, that's saying he has a phenomenal offense and defense throughout the whole year. But if he doesn't do anything other than phenomenal, no, I don't think he's in the Heisman running. But that's what kind of leads me into my number 2. My number 2 guy is Quinn Ewers. He has been playing great. He's getting out of the pocket well. When he is in the pocket, he knows how to work that pocket very well. But again, he is on a very good Texas team. So I think that helps his stock a lot, because even though if he's, he doesn't have to be phenomenal. He just has to be really good. And that's the big difference. So I think if he just plays really good, he's got a better chance, because Texas will probably at least make it to those last 4 teams, I think, if not win it all. So that's why I have Quinn Ewers at number 2. And then next up, truthfully, I've got Dylan Raiola. I mean, I was very impressed with him at Nebraska. And again, Nebraska, isn't playing anybody crazy, but they do have some pretty good teams. They've got Ohio State, they've got USC, so they've got some good teams. So I think if Dylan Raiola plays out the rest of the season really well, I mean, let's say they go undefeated, because I don't know how good USC is up to date. So I think their hardest team is Ohio State. So if they compete with Ohio State or beat them, and he performs well all year round, I think he's in. I don't think he'll win it, but I think he's got to be in that talk about it. But then at my number 4, I've got Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward is a great quarterback. We're all about winning here. So those are my top 4. Do you guys have any of those in your top 3, or did you end up having top 4 as well?
Yeah, for me, Dave, real quick, I want to talk about the Dylan Raiola thing. I don't think that's a far stretch. I don't think it's too bold. I do think he can have his name in this conversation. And to your point, I do think at this point, I think his name has been mentioned a little bit. You're probably not the only one out there having him in their top 3 or 4. He's going to have to play extremely, extremely well in the big games that are on his schedule, though, to catapult him into that conversation. The Ohio State game, the USC game, they play at Iowa to wrap their season up, I think. Yeah, at Iowa's their last game of the season. You're going to have to play really good against the Iowa defense like that, really showcase your skills, especially as a freshman and at this Nebraska team. Yeah, Dave, if they find themselves, 10-2, 11-1, somehow 12-0, I don't think 12-0 is possible. I really don't think 11-1 is possible. But yeah, if they find their way in double-digit wins and Dylan Raiola's leading this team to the promised land, I 100% think you are correct. You seem extremely early now, but hey, we may all look back in 6, 7, 8 weeks and be like, wow, Dave was really on the ball here with this Dylan Raiola pick, and this really does have some traction. But yeah, Bryant, I'll go ahead and kick it over to you. You're new to the show for us. You're going to be a staple here for us. I'm going to kick it over to you. Give the new guy more conversation first. I'm anxious to see what you got as well. Let's have some good conversation here.
So I'm just gonna say I have four. I had one on the list and I kind of scratched it out. I had four guys in mind, and I kind of went and checked what the updated Vegas odds were, and I was kind of too chalk. I feel like a lot of people are high on Carson Beck, and I just don't see it quite yet. I think he's the name that everybody knows from last season. But my top three are Quinn Ewers is number one. I got Cam Ward number two, and then I have Ashton Genty at number three. And then my honorable mention per se is Jackson Dart. I think Ewers cemented himself as number one this past weekend with that win on the road in Michigan. Cam Ward is playing phenomenal. He was that high-end transfer from Washington State that Miami got. He keeps playing like that. Like Dave said, he's going to have to play out of his mind just because of the team he's on. But I think he's more than capable of doing that. And then I think if you got a running back that has 9 touchdowns in the first 2 games combined, you got to put him up there. So that's why I put him at number 3. And then, like Colin was speaking earlier about Jackson Dart, he is playing, out of his mind. So having more touchdowns than incompletions, I think he deserves to be in the conversation as well.
So I like your top 3, Bryant, but I would switch him up just a little bit. I would swap out Jackson Dart for Ashton Genty. And hear me out. Mm-hmm. All I'm going to say is schedule. I'm going to go ahead and run through Boise State's remaining schedule. They played Oregon, which was their hardest game. They beat Georgia Southern. But then after that, they've got Portland State, Washington State, Utah State, Hawaii, UNLV, San Diego State, Nevada, San Jose State, Wyoming, and Oregon State.
Sounds like this guy's going to run for 2,500 yards to me, Dave. Sounds like he's going to cement himself at the top of this Heisman voting. And before we go any further, because everything you're talking about now can completely relate to me because me and Bryant have the same top 4. Different order. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out here. I'm going to have a bold hot take here. Ashton Genty is my number 1 Heisman player thus far up to this point. I know
you are on crack, Colin James. No way Ashton Genty wins the Heisman. Absolutely no chance. I mean, there's
459 yards and 9 touchdowns through 2 games, Dave. That's more offense than Colorado had all last week, and you're sitting here trying to sell me on Travis Hunter. You can miss me with that shit. Ashton Genty, 459 yards and 9 touchdowns, cementing his name at the number 1 spot on my Heisman vote. And when he runs for 300 on Portland State this week, he's going to be my number 1 running back again because he's going to have 12 touchdowns and 700-plus yards. This guy is an absolute machine. Nobody will talk me off this guy of this top spot. If I'm a franchise in the NFL, I'm building around this guy. I don't care what their sayings are about running backs. At number 2, I do have Cam Ward, 689 yards, 6 touchdowns, does have 1 interception. But I'm completely sold on Cam Ward. He's completely restructured this Miami team through 2 games with the big win against Florida. They never had a doubt in that game. He completely shit on Florida's defense. I'm completely sold on Cam Ward. As long as Mario Cristobal stays out of his way, I think we'll also see Cam Ward's name there at the end. At number 3, I do have Jackson Dart. He's at 795 yards and 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's played some lesser opponents, but he's doing exactly what you're supposed to do against those lesser opponents. Like we talked about before, I have and Brian has. I'm going to talk about it again. He's got more touchdowns and incompletions. Wrap your head around that a little bit. That's an absolute absurd stat to hear out loud. I had to go triple check it, quadruple check it because I still didn't believe it. It's real. It's a real thing. Jackson Dart's here to have his name in serious Heisman conversation. And yes, I did 4 as well. None of us follow the rules very well. I'm going to go ahead and extend my number 4 to Quinn Ewers. I know everybody you read right now has got him at the top. I totally understand why. I just don't think he's more talented than the three guys that I've listed ahead of him. I really don't. He has shown great things. He has really improved and built on what he had last year. The guy is an absolute machine. And if the guy was to get crowned the Heisman winner today, based upon what we've seen so far, after 2 games, I wouldn't fight it. I wouldn't be upset about it. I just think that Michigan win overshadows a lot of great things some of these other guys have done. Quinn Ewers, yes, does have 506 yards, 6 touchdowns, and an interception, so nothing to scoff at. And what he did against Michigan was impressive, so I don't want to discredit that either. I just am higher on the other 3 guys, especially Ashton Jeanty. I think it's Ashton Jeanty, space, the next 3 guys. I really do. That's just me, to each their own.
Hold on. We got to pause here because I'm just going to throw the facts out there. I mean, everything is decided on strength of schedule. College football playoffs are, and I think that should directly apply to the Heisman. Boise State doesn't play anybody. It doesn't matter if he puts up a lot of yards. They're a lesser team. When you have somebody, I think if Ollie Gordon has 2/3 of the stats that Ashton Jeanty has, I think he wins it over Ashton Jeanty, and that's just straight fact because they're playing better teams. Let's look at Texas. Let's look at Ole Miss. I mean, they're playing legit teams. Boise State isn't playing anybody. And hear me out. I do think Ashton Jeanty is great. I think he's really good. But I think if we're talking about the best player in the country, it's got to be the best player in the country has got to be somebody that's playing the best teams in the country.
Well, the best part to your take here, Dave, is Ashton Jeanty has played the best opponent on this schedule so far in Oregon. Oregon's the best team of any of these teams that have been played so far. And shall I remind you that he ran for 192 yards and 3 touchdowns on this Oregon Ducks fence. So here we are talking about how we are not sold on these schedules. Dave, he just beat up on Oregon by himself. If Ashton Jeanty wasn't in this game, this would have been a 37-20 shellacking. This would have been 37-14 shellacking. He was the team. He was the offense. I do hear you. I'm all in on stronger opponents. But, yeah, man, he just beat up on a team that you and I had cemented in our top 3 going into this season. Man, this guy's the real deal. You can't talk me out of this. Ashton Jeanty, clear gap than those quarterbacks. It's also going to be extremely hard for him to win this award as a running back. I recognize that. And I do recognize the Boise State take as well. I totally agree with you. But if he keeps doing what he's doing, that's where he separates himself. If he truly can get up, he talked about how he wanted to run for 2,000+ yards. If he can truly run for 2,000+ yards, play an opponent like Oregon and run for 192 on them, Dave, he is going to absolutely bully these lesser opponents and get to those milestone numbers.
Hear me out. The only way I see Ashton Jeanty winning the Heisman is if he carries Boise State all the way. They don't lose another game. They get that 12 seed in, and they make a good run in the playoffs. That's the only way I see it happening because then at that point he's proven himself that he can beat, 1 or 2 teams in the top 12. Now that we got fired up about the Heisman, I didn't think it would get that crazy because I kind of figured we were all going to have the same top 4 and agree with them, but clearly not. But
well, hey, before we advance, you brought up a great point. Can a 1-loss Boise State team with their one loss being to Oregon by 3 points? Bryant, would you give the edge to an undefeated Liberty or a 1-loss Boise State with their 1 loss being a 3-point loss to Oregon?
I think it depends on what their other games looked like, but off on paper, just from what you just asked me, I think you got to go with Boise State, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't know what Liberty's schedule looks like, but I doubt there's a game like Oregon on their schedule.
Liberty's toughest opponent is App State, and we just saw App State get absolutely walked. They got absolutely boat raced by Clemson and gave up 66 points. So if Liberty goes in and has a close game to an App State, I'm fully ready to commit that Boise State is the better team because I think Boise State has shown a lot, man. They sat there and banged with an Oregon team who we have atop of our list all the way to the finish. So I would much rather see a Boise State team that can hang and bang with the top of the top rather than a Liberty that, you still have the questions of, they're undefeated and I think they can get in here and bang around a little bit. But I think Boise State gives the best game, so I'm going to lean Boise State on that one. Just wanted to see what you had to say there.
Listen, I have been talking about how Boise State's schedule's not strong, but I think if Boise State wins out the rest of the year, even if Liberty goes undefeated, you have to give it to Boise State. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if Liberty, crushes everybody this year. If Boise State
I
wins,
agree.
they get in.
I agree.
If Boise State wins out, they're in.
They showed enough in this game. They showed enough. I totally agree. I'm sold on that. Before the season started, you probably couldn't have convinced me of that. But man, I was actually at one point convinced that Boise State was going to win this football game. I really was. So yeah, absolutely, they deserve it over an undefeated Liberty. And this is all hypothetical, obviously. Maybe it may not even be Liberty that we're talking about. Maybe Northern Illinois, right? I mean, they just beat Notre Dame. So I mean, we have plenty of options here, and I love that. I love that we have options for that 12th spot. I think it's awesome that these teams are doing this and stepping up and performing at a higher level. It's made it really fun. It made what looked to be like a boring week 2 a very, very entertaining week 2.
Yeah, this group of 5 teams just have no room for error, so we'll see how they proceed through the rest of the season.
Speaking of how the season's going to end, it's all going to come down to the AP top 25. We're going to hit into our top 25, and these are simply just an eye test. We're basing off wins and losses. It's just this is going to be very different than the AP top 25. Realistically, like there's going to be teams that are not on this list that might be on the AP top 25 and vice versa. But we're rewarding people that have played good, killing the teams that haven't played well. So right off the bat, I'm going to talk about our honorable mentions. So under our honorable mentions, we got A&M, Memphis, Notre Dame, NIU. NIU, clearly they got a good dub. Notre Dame, if they win out, I think they're still a very good team. Memphis, I think they're a solid team. I don't know that they will get into the top 25, but A&M, I think, is a good team, but they just play a hard schedule. And then moving into number 25, we've got Michigan. 24, we got LSU. 23, Clemson. 22, Illinois. At 21, we got Syracuse. Louisville at 20. Boston College at number 9. And then number 18, we've got Nebraska. Right after them, we've got Arizona at number 17. Oklahoma 16. Iowa State 15. Kansas State number 14. Oklahoma State 13. And here's where it gets juicy. Moving into those 12 teams that are fighting for those playoff spots, we've got Utah at 12. Oregon at 11. So pretty big drop-off for them. But again, not a big win against Boise State. And then next, we've got Alabama at number 10. USC number 9. Mizzou at number 8. Number 7, Penn State, after a very close game with Bowling Green. Next up, we've got Ole Miss at number 6. Miami number 5. Tennessee, Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia round up our last 4. So this is what we've got. Again, this is something we've come up with, again, off of like just looks, wins, losses. Again, even within us 3, there was some that we didn't agree on. I think Texas should be the number 1 team in the country. I don't think Georgia has shown as much as Texas has, but talk to us, guys.
Yeah, first, I just want to real quick allude a little bit more to, every week we go to make our top 25. We clean slate it. We wipe it clean, start from 25, go towards 1. And like I said, we start with a completely clean slate. We don't look at what we had last week and try to stay hot on where we had teams. We're moving forward with this system. We're going to wipe it clean, start fresh. Dave, you just said you think Texas should be over Georgia. I'm going to let Bryant tear you up first, and then I'll get after you right after he gets done.
I can see a world where that's the case, but I think Georgia's just been the best team of the past 3 or 4 years. I think they haven't done anything that shows that they shouldn't be the number 1 team in the country. They have the best players. They probably have one of the best coach and coaching staffs. I just don't see. I get the Texas win at Michigan was really big, but I think Georgia's still number 1, regardless of what Texas has done.
I'm with you, Bryant. It's really, really hard for me to want to move on from this Georgia team and slide a team above them. I don't. It's so hard to even talk about, really, because then again, I want to agree with you, Dave. I really do. Texas does have the best win compared to Georgia. I say that. Let me ask you guys that question. Do you value Georgia's win over Clemson, or do you value Texas's win over Michigan more? I mean, that's really what this comes down to. Which one do you value more, I think both teams showed that they were in full control of both games. Georgia was week 1. Texas was week 2. I think I'm going to lean Texas. Here's why. Clemson was a 13.5-point underdog, I believe, when that game closed. And so that was a farther apart game, right? Georgia was meant to go in and win that game by double digits. When this Texas and Michigan game, it was all over the place. It was 5, it was 6, it was 3. It was back and forth, especially early on. So I'm going to value the Texas win over Michigan more. And Dave, saying that, it makes me want to lean in your direction. But, man, it's Georgia. If you line these two teams up right now tomorrow, I'm picking Georgia. I'm picking Georgia all day. So that's why I still do think Georgia cements the number 1 spot.
Well, hear me out. I know you're starting to lean, and get where I'm coming from. But truthfully, you're now convincing me back the other way because, I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, Texas beats Michigan. But, it's no shock that Michigan doesn't look great. But then we have, Georgia beating Clemson, which you would have asked me before this weekend. I would have said Clemson's probably not that good. But then you see Clemson go out and put 66 points on App State, which is a pretty good team. Maybe they just had to figure it out. I mean, maybe Clemson's better than we thought they were. So I'm like, crap, I don't know. Maybe Georgia should be that number 1 guy, that number 1 team. So I'm now leaning more like, okay, I see where you're coming from, and I'm with you with Georgia now. I'm with you with Georgia at number 1 because now that I'm looking at Texas, I don't know how good Michigan is. 4 weeks out, it may change. I may be back with Texas because I think that's more of a valuable win. But to tell you the truth, I'm with you on Georgia. Now that I look at it a different way, I'm with you on Georgia.
Yeah, I think it's a lot closer than, people around the country think as far as 1-2 Georgia, Texas. But like we've been saying, I think you just give the nod to Georgia just because they've been there, they've done it. Yeah, Texas might have a slightly better win than Michigan, but it's hard to pull them off in one spot.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, though, we sit here and now I'm just going to overanalyze everything with this topic, and that's awesome to do. It's a great conversation. But to your point, Bryant, we sit here and talk about Georgia's been there, done that. Hey, Georgia wasn't there doing it last year, and Texas was there doing it last year. So, I mean, now I ask myself, hey, does that lean Texas back to the forefront again of this thing? Maybe should Texas be 1? Should we have it just 1A, 1B at this point? Then I look down a little bit further, and I see Ohio State at 3. We could sit here and make a case for Ohio State to be the number 1 team in the country coming into the season. We were right there with Ohio State, was just as talented as Georgia. It was essentially, again, it was 1A, 1B. Is Ohio State, should they be in this conversation to fight for this 1 spot? I think we have 3 really, really good football teams that are going to battle that out. Does it shake out for them 3 to be at the top at the end? Obviously we're going to have to wait and see on that. What surprises me here is that we've gone this far and we haven't talked about Tennessee at number 4. Made a massive jump in our poll last week. We had them at, I think, 15. That moves them up to number 4. We had them jumping 9 spots, or maybe we had them at 14 or 13. Sorry, the math's not mathing, but I know we had them move up 9 spots here in our notes. And yeah, man, Tennessee has shown me as much as anybody. This is why we have them cemented in here at the 4 spot. And I'm very impressed with everything they've shown so far. The SEC looks great. Not trying to have SEC bias here, but the SEC does look absolutely outstanding. And I also think, man, you could make a case for Miami at number 5. I think really you could make a case for any of these top 5 teams that we have on our list to really push for that 1 spot. Yes, I do think it's Georgia, Texas gap, but, I'm just trying to make a case for all of them.
Well, going off of that top 25, and I know we're kind of going on different rabbit holes here, but with it being a 12-team playoff, I mean, does that make a difference? Because now you're looking at, if you're going to make it to the national championship, you're playing 4 extra games. I mean, even with the 14 playoff, teams are coming into the playoffs beat up already. You lose a couple guys here and there. You have a couple injuries. Does that make a difference moving forward? Like, let's look at these top 4 teams. Like, what are their depths like? Like, how deep are they at those positions? Let's look at Texas. If Texas loses Quinn Ewers, they still got more Arch Manning that has shown that he's got some potential. But if Georgia's losing Carson Beck, what does that look like for them? What does that look like for Ohio State? What does that look like for Tennessee? I think that's something that people haven't thought about quite to this point yet. I mean, I'm sure some people have, but I don't think a lot of people are thinking about this. Like, they're playing 4 extra games. If you're a top seed, you're looking more at 3. But let's say you're a middle of the pack team, you got a couple extra games going in there, and these are going to be not just regular 4 games. These going to be hard opponents week in and week out. I mean, I think that changes the landscape. I think that changes everything, and I think it truly does show who's the better team, because when we have a 14 playoff, you can show up for 2 games, but 4 games, you're beat up by the end of that.
Well, it's very, very easy for people just to come in here and talk about how Texas has 2 really good quarterbacks. Obviously, they do. Everybody knows Arch Manning's name. We've already talked about him on this show a few times. Obviously, that's where everybody wants to point in that direction. To your point, Georgia did lose their backup quarterback in Brock Vandagriff to Kentucky. So, yeah, it thins them out a little bit at that quarterback position. But Ohio State, in my opinion, is far and away built the best in that quarterback room. They have quarterback Devin Brown, who played in the bowl game for them last year, backing up Will Howard. You have Julian Sayin, who can rip it around, who transferred from Alabama already up to Ohio State. He was a 5-star quarterback. And you have quarterback Aaron Nolan. He was a highly touted recruit as well. This Ohio State team is built far and away extremely deep at every position. If we want to get down to the nitty-gritty and really talk about depth, I think they are built the best to last the long season and make the full stretch. I try not to gamble on injuries. I try not to think about injuries just because you can't predict that. You can't control that. So I try to keep everything like that out of sight, out of mind as it's going through. But, yeah, if you want to talk about that piece a little bit, I do think Georgia, Texas, and Ohio State are far and away much better depth-wise than the rest of this remaining top 25.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it for years on end, especially now with the transfer portal. These teams have 4 and 5-star guys all over the roster. Top 100 transfers that we may not even know about, really. They're on the team. They're, second, third in the depth chart. They could be starting for, teams 14 and below ranked on this probably. So, yeah, I agree. I mean, these top probably even 6 or 7 teams are just absolutely loaded at every position. So Texas does have a good backup in Arch Manning, but I think any one of these teams will be just fine as long as there's not major injuries across the board.
Yeah, one thing I'll talk about here real quick too is let's give a little bit of love to Mizzou here. We don't spend a whole lot of time talking about Mizzou. We try to keep the homerism out of it, so we really try not to cover them as much as maybe other outlets do. As crazy as that sounds, being our home team. But yeah, man, we have Mizzou up here at this 8 spot. I don't think that's too unrealistic for them. I think that's a really good position for them right now. Things are looking really good. But while I want to bring them up is everybody talked about how easy this schedule was going into this season. They got a capital C, capitalize on this schedule and make a playoff push here. And I totally agree with you. But now we're looking at a Boston College team who has now weaseled their way into conversation to be in the top 25. And we here have them at 19. So this becomes a little bit tougher of a schedule. A Vanderbilt team's on this schedule. Most people laugh at Vanderbilt, but hey, Vanderbilt going and beating a Virginia Tech team that we're extremely high on here. This schedule is getting a little bit tougher. Let's see how Drinkwitz and this program really answers things. Bryant, I guess the biggest question I have for you, because you and I do this every year together, we cry together about Mizzou upsetting us. We laugh together when we somehow turn around and beat the hell out of somebody we shouldn't. Just total Mizzou things. Let's say Mizzou wraps this thing up at 11-1, somehow 12-0. They do beat Alabama. They do beat a Texas A&M. Or maybe let's say they lose to an Alabama. Let's say they find their way to the playoffs is really my question here, Bryant. Do you think a team could come in and cherry pick Eli Drinkwitz off this team? Does Kirby Moore stay around? I'd find it very hard to believe that if all things go as planned and all things go well, that we retain both of those guys going into next season. And I think Kirby Moore is as key of a piece as anybody in this University of Missouri football program.
No, definitely agree. I don't think Drinkwitz leaves. Strictly money speaking, he's like the 4th highest paid coach in the league now. Sadly, I think Kirby Moore is probably the prime candidate to get moved. But if we're going to be if Mizzou has aspirations to be like the higher end of the SEC, you're going to get players poached. You're going to get coaches poached. You just got to backfill. Going to this season, I think we've done that at the defensive coordinator position. Our defense is absolutely flying around. We have players all over the field. We don't look like we took a step back after losing 5 guys to the league. I think we've just as good, if not maybe slightly better than we were last season. Yeah, we haven't really played anybody, but I think you're right. I think it'd be tough to retain both of them. I think Drink is probably safe. I think he enjoys being coach here. I think he sees the potential with recruiting and in the program itself. But I think Kirby Moore would probably be a prime candidate for a coaching job, probably at a decent school.
So before we get out of here, we are talking about Mizzou, and you talked about this a little bit. You're right, Bryant. They've played Murray State and Buffalo, but they've allowed 0 points. I don't care who you're playing. You play 2 games, and you start the season with a new defensive coordinator, plenty of new faces on that defensive side of the football. To your point, they backfilled a ton on that defensive side, and you gave up 0 points in back-to-back games. That's absolutely incredible. You can hang your hat on that. I don't care who the opponents were. When you do it twice, that's something to hang your hat on. That is very, very impressive. I have a bold take in mind. I don't know if I'm ready to drop it yet. I don't know if I'm ready to come out with it yet. We have talked about a team so far tonight where I do think their coach gets removed and gets fired before the season's over. We've talked about Kirby Moore. All I'm going to say is I think Kirby Moore will have a head coaching job on one of the teams that we've talked about tonight where I think they lose their head coach. I'll let you guys decide who you think I'm talking about, but I'm actually pretty confident that this could happen if Mizzou's offense really clicks. I'll let you guys think what you want to think here, and I'll just make it fun.
I'm going to go right back to talking about the University of Missouri, because when Eli was first brought over to the University of Missouri, I said, man, this is great. He's coming from App State. App State has developed a great winning program. And Colin said, no. And I quote, he's a dipshit. And we try to keep it PG around here, but hey, he told me, he was like, no, absolutely not. He's terrible. He's,
when we extended this guy, he had a losing record. So give me a little bit of credit. I didn't understand the extension, especially when you have a losing record. Hey, I am the first one to eat crow when I am wrong, and I have been wrong.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I think we didn't necessarily realize or see the inside the locker room type coach that he is. I feel like this is the most dynamic team when it comes to how much they play for each other. We talked about Colorado playing for the individuals. I feel like Mizzou as a team plays for team on the front, not the name on the back. And I think that's one of the bigger reasons they brought Drink back with a losing record.
Well, and you're absolutely right. And I mean, everything that they're showing right now proves everything that you're saying. And I also want to say, I think truthfully, maybe Barry Odom just left this team in that big a shambles. I mean, it was an absolute shambles. I should have recognized that. Maybe I was just a pissed off Mizzou fan because things were not going good at all for us for a while. Man, we're here now. We're having some fun with it. Let's just hope we keep riding it. But yeah, one of these days I'm going to drop this bold take on this coaching move I have, from Mizzou's offensive coordinator.
I previously to this year hadn't really kept up with Mizzou very much because let's be honest, they hadn't been very good. But, keeping up with them this year, towards the end of last year, and then really now that, I'm kind of back in Missouri, kind of just because you want to root for your hometown team. But they look like a good program. I think they have very high potential in the SEC. I don't think they're going to be that team, be the number one team in the SEC, but I think they will always compete very heavy. I think there will be on the upper half of these teams on a very consistent basis. And I think if you can, keep some staff around, you keep some players around, and you just keep winning, I think Mizzou has a very good chance of being a very high caliber team. Not saying they're not now, but there's always that talk of like, oh, it's just this year. Next year they'll be terrible. But I think Mizzou is a very good program, and I think they're heading in a great direction with Eli Drinkwitz. But we'll see. They might even win the national championship. I'm just throwing it out there. AP Top 25 got them at number 6, which is impressive. But I don't think they're 6. But we'll see. They may prove us wrong again.
If that happens, you won't see me for a couple weeks.
If Mizzou somehow wins, and if Mizzou makes it to the Final Four, you won't see me for weeks. I mean, this would be the best thing to ever happen to me as a sports fan. It's just something that I've came to the realization probably won't happen in my lifetime. But hey, they're sure trying to give it a hell of a chance right now, and I'm here for it. I love it. Let's just hope they don't Mizzou. How do I work? Let's just hope they don't do Mizzou things. And, this Boston College game does have me a little worried now. This is a total Mizzou thing to do. But, hey, what they can do to prove that they are different than any other Mizzou team in the past is to go in here, take care of business again, leave no doubts. Don't let reporters talk next week on their shows about how, Mizzou's just taking advantage of an easy schedule and shouldn't be ranked, in the top 10. They're not for real. They're a fraud. Take care of business like you should. Leave no doubts. You'll find your name at the top of these lists over and over again. Just keep doing your thing.
Yeah, it's a big game. Let's hope it ends up like Tennessee and NC State this past weekend.
Take that, Dave, because your hometown team is absolutely ass right now and in shambles.
Tell you the truth, I don't think they're that bad. I don't think Grayson McCall is the guy to bring over. Let's talk just NC State and Tennessee. I think Tennessee is going to be for sure. I think they're a lock at a playoff team. So they're a good team. Now, I do think NC State should have hung in there a little bit better. But again, it's Tennessee. They're a good team. So I still got hope for my boys.
Well, to your point, you have a team like Tennessee who we now on our outlet have Tennessee in the top 4. It makes it really hard for a team like Missouri to make the playoffs because you have so many good SEC teams. Right off the rip, right here in our top 5, we have 3 in the top 5. We have Georgia 1, Texas 2, Tennessee 4. Right there, you have 3 teams automatically that Mizzou is competing with. We're not talking about Bama yet, Ole Miss yet. Then you're talking about Missouri. I mean, there's truly 6 SEC teams right now, the way it looks, that can make a run at this thing. So that makes it really hard for all 6 of these SEC teams. The margin of error, like we talked about earlier. Bryant talked about the margin of error for the group of 5 schools. The margin of error in a power conference like the SEC is just as small because it's going to come down to a 1-loss difference. It's going to come down to who has and who hasn't. And that's really what's going to separate a lot of these teams at the finish line. A team like Boise State may take that last 12th spot, and you'll have a team like Missouri sitting there at number 12 in the rankings that has to sit out because the 12th seed will go to the group of 5 school. So it's going to be really interesting. Not to get into too much Mizzou talk here. It was fun. But, yeah, it's going to make things extremely interesting down the stretch. To your point, Dave, I am extremely shocked that NC State has already been removed from our rankings. I do believe you. They are a good program. Dave Doyne's one of the best coaches in the country, in my opinion. So, yeah, I really look for NC State to rebound as well.
Absolutely. So that wraps it up for us today. We had a lot of fun. It was great to have another guest on board, and he'll be joining us for the foreseeable future. So it's going to be fun. We're going to have very different viewpoints. Like you saw, we're going to agree on a lot, but we're also going to disagree on a lot. And we're going to tell you how it is. We're going to give it to you. But big thing is here, we're going to keep bringing great content. We're going to keep bringing great information and, a couple cool things here and there as we kind of get things going with Deep Threat Sports Network. But next up, I'm going to just shoot it over to Colin, have him talk to you guys a little bit, and then we'll go from there.
Go ahead, Bryant. Give us your take. I hope you had some fun with us. We're happy to have you here. Go ahead and tell me how you thought things went today and, what you're wanting to bring to the table the rest of the way to help us out here.
I thought it went pretty well. Not gonna lie, I was a little nervous when I started out, but I think it ended up pretty good. More sets of eyes on different games will, bring different thoughts from different spots and look at different things. So I think I'll bring, plenty to the table. More argument, more agreeing. So we'll see. I think it'll be fun.
Hey, I absolutely love the banter. I love going back and forth. Bryant, you and I already text college football all the time as well. So you may as well get on here and rip it with us. Love your takes. Love the knowledge. Bring a ton to the table. Love having you here to take these deep dives with us. Things have been a lot of fun. We're hitting the ground running. We love all the support we've had from you guys so far. Just keep being there for us. We're going to keep leaning on you, keep liking, keep subscribing. Things are really looking good for this channel, this network. Like Dave talked about a second ago, we have expanded the Deep Threat Sports Network. We talked about that in our last episode as well. Be looking for our other outlets. We've recently had a NASCAR podcast take off, hit the ground running. We have NFL, MLB baseball, NHL hockey. We have all those things coming to you soon. College basketball on the hook. Really love doing this with you guys. We're going to look to get back to you guys, Thursday or Friday this week. Go ahead and do a preview of the big games upcoming this week in week 3. Going to give out our best bets, as we like to call it now, our Book It segment, as a lot of you love to come listen to. We have a lot of fun with that. Looking really forward to get Brian's takes on that as well. Fellas, it's been a blast. It's been fun. It's been real. We'll holler at you all next time. Peace.